Hey everybody, this is Doug Guards, and we're back with another video. So it's been a while since I've actually posted a video where I've talked rather than just quick uploads of little clips or something. So I wanted to make this video, and I'll probably make a couple more today as well, but I wanted to talk about this really kind of neat ideal I had before I personally forget, because I know if I don't talk about it, I will just forget it, and putting it on Twitter is probably not enough. So, you know, as normal with how ideals work, was in the shower and was like, you know what, I have this really cool ideal. I started exploring in my head the ideal for this ideal, which weird tongue twister there, but what my thought is something called the Grand CJI. Now this started off as just kind of something random. You know how your mind just kind of wanders off and just does its own little thing and just starts thinking of things. But I was thinking of kind of, I don't know, siege warfare, because we often play Men of War Assault Squad 2, in which often we get into like a siege type scenario where we end up setting up a defense and the enemy AIs usually smack into us wave after wave after wave until we either run out of ammo or people to defend. And I was thinking, you know what, what's the reverse of that? Could we have where we have to break into some kind of siege? We'd like have some kind of siege system and everything else, and this kind of devolved into how to do this in Minecraft, where we build up like castle walls and put like sentry guns on them and traps and explosive hidden things and all kinds of stuff, and it kept going and kept going and kept going, and my brain just started evolving this out into a complete concept for what I call the Grand CJI, which is a concept. It's not really what you would think of an AI standard. So people would be like, hey, you're going to load up a match in some game and you're going to pick like some difficulty of AI, easy, medium, hard, heroic. This would be a single AI that was ever continuously adapting. So it wouldn't be a difficulty setting, it would actually more or less be the maximum difficulty you could have, because it would be an AI that would learn as you play. So if you use some kind of strategy on it and it turned out to be super effective, it would build a way to counter that and possibly even use that strategy against you in the future. In this case, it would probably start off rather simple, because after all, part of this ideal is that I'm going to have to build up to this. We're gonna have to start off with like a small little AI, and this is similar to something I was working on like way back in like 2013, maybe even 2012, for the Guardsman mod and the Artillex mod, where we were going to build fortresses and little hive cities and little things that would fight the player and give some reason to having things like ICBM and having sentry guns and having your own NPC armies to fight with and everything else. And with that, we were going to build kind of these personalized AIs that would have certain personalities that would set up their bases in certain ways and would do certain things. You would have like passive AIs that would do like nothing. They would just build, they would farm, they would have castles, they would have their fortresses and defenses, and they wouldn't do anything until provoked. And then when you provoke them, then they would respond in a certain way depending on the AI they were. We would have other AIs that were highly aggressive, AIs that would try to cooperate with you, AIs that literally did nothing but stupid stuff. You know, like a wide variety. That was kind of one of the ideals of the Artillex mod, was to do that. And of course, the Guardsman mod never kind of got to that point, because the Artillex was a continuation of the Guardsman mod. For those who never heard about the Guardsman mod, it was pretty much my first released mod ever that featured NPC AIs that guarded things. I built it because people were ninjaing stuff from my BuiltCraft wells, and I was like, you know what, I need something to sit here and just smack people over the head with a stick and tell them to go away. So we built that, and it had armories, it had barracks, it had a lot of stuff going for it, and I'm kind of sad I never continued that mod because it had a lot of really cool things. But at the time, I wasn't skilled enough to keep going with it because didn't know much about AIs, barely could program all kinds of other variety of different things. But yeah, so moving on back to the kind of Grand CJI, is that we would pick up on a lot of that. We would build up from kind of that starting point of having very simple AIs and would evolve them into kind of a layered system. Because when we end up working on this, when we build the Grand CJI, we can't just build an AI that will operate on its own, just have something that would command units and push them around and build defenses, and would be your stereotypical like Crusaders AI or StarCraft, or you know, the thing that builds a base and attacks you. That wouldn't work, because that's defeatable, it's predictable, it's something that is meant to be easily defeated. So what we would need to do would build a series of layers of AI. So we would need to build AIs that entire purpose was to defend certain areas, AIs that entire purpose is to gather resources, AIs entire purpose is to kind of figure out the strategy of the map. AIs that would gather intelligence for the big AI to figure out kind of what's going to go on, and then of course you would need AIs that are completely separated from this, that entire purpose is to do things like detect for cheating. Because one of the concepts I want to do with this Grand AI is I want to put it on a server. I want to have the server have like a 200 population limit. That's really just a number we're picking simply because I don't have a better idea. But I want to put on there, and when I want to have mods put on the server. So I want people to be able to create their own gear and weapons and strategies. So like somebody's like, hey, what if we used a KV2 tank to fight this AI? I want somebody to be able to program a KV2 tank, put ammunition in it, put a machine gun on it, do all the things they want to do, and drive up to the fortress wall and try to attack it. That would be really, really cool, because it would prevent from me having to develop all the content myself if we made this into a game or a mod or whatever. Alright, small interruption kind of there. But I was saying, like, we would be able to let people develop their own content, get it on the server, get things changed and implemented so they can do pretty much whatever we want. And part of this is we would have to detect for cheating, more or less, because you're going to get somebody who's going to go, oh, I can put whatever I want on the server. Let me make a dubstep gun that can wipe out an entire wall. And more importantly, let me develop that gun so that way only on the day we're going to do the siege will it actually work the way it does. So that way when the admins go to look at it, they go, oh, it's just a little pew-pew plasma gun. And then at a certain time it flips over to the actual feature and can wipe out an entire wall. We would want to be able to detect for that ahead of time, because we don't want to have people unfairly do things. After all, we can kind of allow things like that to happen. If somebody wants to defeat an AI that way, we can allow it. But we need to be able to know it's going to happen, and we need to be able to let the AI kind of comprehend what's going on. So if somebody ends up building something like that, we can run it through a system and go, hey, in this code there's a date stamp that runs a certain time. Let's go ahead and switch the system local time to this, and let's test the weapon. Because what we could do is use another system I'm planning on building, which is called Mr. Smith, and have it pre-test a lot of these mods before they get on the server, and kind of see what they do, see the functionality. Like if we aim the weapon a certain way, or we do certain things where we click certain buttons, kind of go through that, and then we use a code analysis AI on top of that to kind of figure out what we need to be testing. Like if we see a gun that fires arrows, but then if you have cobblestone in your inventory, it fires like stone arrows, or fires cluster arrows or something. So if it does different things based on the code logic, we can test for that and see how they behave, and we can kind of pre-plan for what's going on. This is not so much to give the AI unfair advantage, because we want to have there be some kind of surprise, but it would be more or less to prevent certain things from happening a certain way, as well pre-build up kind of a response to it. So like if cluster arrows magically spawn out of like a book somebody's throwing, the AI would be able to look at that and go, oh, okay, so I see what's going on, he's casting a spell or something. So the AI would have some kind of comprehension of what was going on and be able to trigger events that would go and understand that all these arrows being spawned are coming from this player, and they can recognize that that's happening, and then have something it can do in return to that. So to be able to know that it needs to attack this player because this player is using a very powerful weapon or something else. And then what we can also do is have the AI be able to eventually learn how to do this itself within some given rules. One of the rules I was thinking of is we have a grace period. So we say, okay, if a player adds a new mod to the server, we want to make sure that the AI cannot use it within a month if the player doesn't use it. So if the player adds something to the server and doesn't do anything with it for a month, then the AI can eventually pick up on that and utilize it. That, or we just remove the mod after a month if the player's not using it, because we don't have a 500 mod pack. But then if a player uses it, then the AI gets up to a week before it's allowed to use it. So if a player uses it in battle and stuff like that, then we would allow a week of grace period so the player can continue trying to use that in the siege without the AI getting the advantage of having that item. And then after that, if the AI manages to capture the item, then it's a couple days before it learns how to use it. So you'd put some kind of role system mechanic in there so that way the AI doesn't get a huge unfair advantage, but at the same time we have certain mechanics put in place so we can detect for cheating, we can detect for exploits, we can detect for unfair gameplay, which is what it really comes down to. We want to have this, if we're going to build this up as a game specifically or a mod, is that this is meant to be a fun thing to do. So the AI exists not so much to be this unbeatable force, but something you can come back to and play and try to defeat, kind of like a long-term chess match where you could have like 200 people just continuously trying to figure out how to beat this AI over and over and over again. Or beat some of its lesser AIs, because we'll probably make a whole bunch of micro versions of this. We may make like a medieval version of this AI that you can go fight and do Castle Warfare. We may make a futuristic version of it. The particular one I'm thinking of for the Grand Siege AI would be a robotic type thing, like the Matrix. So you would have a wide variety of robots and hidden cannons in the walls and all this kind of stuff that would go on. That would be really sci-fi stuff, and you'd be able to fight it and attack it, and it would be constantly adapting its base design and constantly moving defenses around and doing all kinds of cool things. But yeah, that's what I've got right now. So as for when this would ever happen, I have no clue. So we still got a huge amount of things to go through when it comes in terms of mods right now, and the number one thing I want to solve is whether or not I should make this a mod or a game. If I make it a mod, it's going to be hell. That's as simple as it gets. It's going to be something that's going to be really, really difficult, because I'll be continuously working around Mojang updates over and over and over again. If I make it a game, then I could do whatever I want. I can have whatever amount of time I want to do. I can make my own modding layers for it. I can open it up. I might just make it open source and just be like, hey, go at it. Have fun, I don't care. As long as you pay like $5, you can log into the server or something. I may like, actually this is maybe what I do, is if I make it a game, I can make the base game free, and then make where if you pay like $5, then you get access to the servers. Or pay like, I probably won't be $5 because if I'm gonna make this game, it's gonna charge some monetary amount for it, because after all, you'll have to continue development. You might have to hire people to work on the game, and that's not free. But then we'll have to get a design and plan going on, because this is something complicated. So if we make it a game, we're gonna have to build more or less a game, which in itself is not as difficult as people make it sound to be. The part that's more difficult is getting all the content built. Like, we can build a map, we can fill it with trees and bushes, we can build castle walls. That stuff is not really that hard. You can mock up a game that has all of that and swords and everything else in a single day. You really can. You can even make a multiplayer in a single day. It's getting there to be substance past that. So like having a variety of weapons, having character creation menus, having multitudes of different characters, movement actions. That's when your time starts to get into there, because you start working on animations, you have to start working on different models, and there's just a sheer amount of time it takes to implement things. We would then have to build a whole bunch of NN layers, which are neural networks. We probably won't use a pure neural network for this because of the fact that I need this to behave in certain ways. So what will end up happening is we'll build neural networks that are designed to recognize data sets and take those data sets, manipulate them, and turn it into some usable information. We'll then probably attach those to behavior trees, and the behavior trees will then be run off of a self-adaptive behavior tree. This is something I've been working on personally for a while. That is a AI that can rewrite itself, but it doesn't work in the same way a neural network does. A neural network kind of manipulates its data structure over time using learning algorithms and everything else, which is cool, but not really something that's usable for a video game. But what you can do is you can make a behavior tree, use neural networks, and then have several other mechanics that allow you to adjust a behavioral tree. So we can have a behavior tree that if somebody sees a tank coming up, well, we know we need to have an anti-tank gun, or we need to rush it with infantry with Molotov cocktails to catch it on fire. So you can actually have a behavior tree that expands upon itself and adapts and learns, and you can maybe even have a neural network that just sits around and messes with that and adapts it, plays with it. We'll then need neural networks that exist separate from this that detect for cheating, parse code, looking for exploits, looking for bugs. Big thing with this one is a lot of this would be done by the Mr. Smith software, which is going to be kind of an automated testing system we're going to use for mods and games and anything else, to be honest, that we build on the premise of detecting for issues real early in pre-testing conditions. So if we know, for example, that we are going to have swords and we're going to have like hundreds of swords, but the swords all generally behave the same, we can run them all through the same code parser and go, okay, all the structure looks the same, okay, so the structure hasn't changed between sword A and B, therefore we can run the same tests on it, so we can swing it, we can slash it, we can throw it, we can do a lot of like basic things and make sure that it works the way expected, and this is all automated, but it's done in real time in that game, so that way we get to see an actual behavior test rather than doing like a unit test that only tests the code. Then we're going to need tons of things like map renders, readers, and battle planners, and we might have micro AIs that exist to just control like squads of infantry, so there's a huge amount that goes in here. And then there'll be rules and balancing, so we want to make sure that the AI behaves a certain way. You don't want to have this grand AI just do whatever it wants to do, because after all, it's meant to be something for players to fight against. So we'll have to define rules that, hey, you can only operate within a certain amount of area, hey, you can't just mine the whole place out and make a trench, or you can't just make the ground unwalkable, or you can't just cover the whole place with AA guns or missile batteries. So there'd be like a limit to what it's allowed to do. We'll have to make it play fairly too, so we'll have to make it work within its resources and scavenge equipment and build units, and there'll be a whole bunch of balancing going with this. And it's a lot of stuff to just make sure that the player has a chance, guarantee that the player has an equally and fair chance, but at the same time making it challenging for the player. And this would also go on the player side too. We would have to make sure the players are following the rules. Like, hey, you have to pre-schedule your siege day. Like, you have to actually go into some kind of wiki and go, hey, I go into some forum and say, our team wants to try to attack this day. That way you don't have like 5 different teams all attacking at the same time. You don't have scheduling problems. You don't have people not showing up at the right time. You don't have people just randomly attacking the wall and failing and getting upset. So you want to make sure that's done, and that also lets us make sure the AI has an opportunity to rebuild its walls or rebuild its defenses, because we don't want to have the AI just spawn items. So we're going to treat it and make it work exactly like it would a player would. So it would have to build its own units. It would more or less think the game world was the only world it could see. So it would play by all the game rules. And then I got to find time. So that's the last thing we have to figure out for this, is getting this fit into everything else we're working on, like atomic science and all that stuff. Anyways, I'm going to leave this video here, and yeah,